Oh, here we go. Okay. So I'd like to start with, and I'm really glad that Emmy and Stephen are here. Andy, at our meeting last week with the Cal Walks group, Andy, and in our meeting of the task force, I think previous to that, I mean, we've all heard Andy say how strong his support is for this. I apologize for this. I'd like to figure out how to disconnect my phone from my computer, but anyway. You're muted, Aline. In looking over the active transportation program grant, I mean, there's a whole lot of information, but there are a number of, entities that are qualified to apply for grants. And I think that that's where I'd like to start today, in terms of what your perceptions, Emmy and Stephen, are in terms of, is it would it be a good idea for Lucia Mar Unified School District to be lead on basically kind of a, safe schools type of application? As I looked at the ATP, they have they're the new agency that's combined all the safe schools and some safe streets and stuff into one place, and they're the ones that get where the federal grants come into. So what's your opinion about Lucia Mar being the lead agency on this? And what about a collaboration of official agencies like Lucia Mar and the county teaming up? I mean, what do you guys think? Guy and gal think, pardon me.
I'll hop in on that. I think that going forward with trying to at least meet this first deadline, the March 22nd, with the school district would probably be most beneficial, just because, as you know, the wheels turn a little slower here. So if you have someone who's on board and you're not convincing, let's say, a board member that this needs to be a priority, that would probably be the first step. And then, as they had discussed in the meeting last time, using that as a jumping off point for additional grants. And I think those would be a good time to then say, hey, we got this one. It really helped with the school areas. We're going to move forward with, all these other areas. And I think that would give you more momentum there. Additionally, it would package up nicely. All of this would package up nicely information for any sort of revisions you want to make later for, public works or for planning for like a specific plan.
Okay. Emmy, would you say just a little bit more and I appreciate everything you shared, and that's kind of validates some of what I was thinking. But you said if you don't have a board member on board, you're talking about the supervisors.
The supervisors, yeah, the board of supervisors. I'm thinking more, again, how we prioritize work, and so it would have to go through that whole process still.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, from my perspective, it's always a great idea to have these partnered applications. And if Lucia Mar is the lead agency, I guess I would, also say that it comes down to, if you're awarded money, who can enter into an agreement with Caltrans to receive the money and in turn construct and maintain the project. So it'll always have to be a partnership with county, regardless of who submits the application. But we have seen, for the Bob Jones Trail, there were a small committee of committed residents that pretty much wrote the application with a little support from SLOCOG and from County Parks. But that, of course, had 30 years worth of public support for that project. So the point of getting, Supervisor Compton into this conversation and this loop is a great idea.
Mhm.
And I know I just forgot his name.
Um,
Her assistant,
oh,
Caleb.
yeah,
Caleb, yeah.
Caleb.
So if that's kind of the direction you guys are thinking, that would be a good first point of contact. Would be some sort of communication with Caleb.
Okay.
And I'm looking just at the email that you sent out for the meeting, and as far as the role of SlowCog has always been one for support as far as data analysis and other sort of performance metric, putting those together.
Mhm.
But also we typically are a funding leveraging stakeholder in this whole grant pursuit. Typically with the way that we prioritize projects is it's a little bit nuanced, I guess, but this community specifically for multimodal improvements is one of our target communities.
Uh-huh.
So that, and I think I had let you guys know, we had about $270,000 set away as grant leverage for ATP Cycle 5. Those funds are still, technically committed to a project there on the front Street corridor. So as far as what money is available or could be available, maybe it's around 270, maybe it's a little bit more.
Okay. When I was talking with the Director of Public Works last week, he mentioned the Beach Street Pacific Coast Highway parklet notion, that, and what I thought he implied was that that was a something that Public Works was looking at being for Oceano, kind of I don't know if it's the top of the list, but that's something that they want to move forward on, that specific one.
Yeah, we've had that conversation. They do want to move forward with some temporary, I don't know if it's K-rails or if it's planters or something to temporarily close it off for, whatever, 6 months, a year. And then assess and look at what sort of design changes, if any, need to be made before considering some sort of permanent installation.
Okay.
And I'm also, I that is one of the project components that we were trying to support in the grant last year. And I think I had told you guys the other two locations were the intersections of Front Street and 15th and 13th Paso Robles,
Right.
I think. Yeah, those are the other two spot locations that we're hoping to fund improvements.
Okay. So let's say we're hugely successful. We put this grant together, application for, I'll just say, we put it together for $10 million. And will the county, when I've gotten feedback from other people that, well, you can't just go out and get $10 million for a project, that $10 million has to be kind of, the county will decide where to prioritize that money. And I wasn't really, that didn't sound right, that, an agency would put together a grant in collaboration with the county for this project and get the funding, but then it's really may not be for that. Is that, am I just misunderstanding that, or can you clarify?
No, that's not accurate. So ATP is awarded on a project by project basis.
Right. Okay,
Yeah,
that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
I think maybe what they were saying though is that the county does have to in perpetuity be maintaining that. So maybe that's kind of what the cost and that was
right,
maybe
okay.
coming from.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I don't think the Lucia Mar School District wants to get into street maintenance issues. Okay. Also, in my discussion with John, he said that when I mentioned that Oceano and if I'm repeating myself here, I apologize. But that the criteria for what's a disadvantaged community has changed. I mean, relatively recently. That I mean, a while ago it was just Oceano and San Miguel that qualified, but now there's kind of more inclusive criteria or diverse criteria. I don't know what would be the best way to express it, but where I mean, actual specific neighborhood within an unincorporated community could be designated as disadvantaged. And do you have any sense of that?
Sorry, tell me again. Someone was at my window and trying to say something to me, so I kind of missed that a little bit.
That there's new criteria.
Right.
Disadvantaged community, or neighborhood, or block, or whatever.
So as far as the ATP, the Active Transportation Program, there's change. It seems to change every cycle. Okay. So this past cycle, it was pretty broad as far as which criteria you can use. Just kind of the classic median household income. That's one of them. And the state has several tools. One's called CalEnviro screen that considers like pollution, as well as socioeconomic factors. And then there's the Healthy Places Index that kind of that broadens that sort of health indicators in terms of your access to food and things like that. And I know for the last cycle and cycle 5, and all those different disadvantaged communities criteria have different amount of points that you can get. You've probably kind of looked through that scoring rubric, right? And it's got all sorts of different breakouts for the points. But what we used for this project was the percentage of kids at Oceano Elementary that qualified for the free and reduced price meal program. And it was really high. I want to say it was like over, 80, 90% perhaps. So that maxed out how many points you can get within that criteria. So as far as disadvantaged communities, it's a moving target, and it's kind of like choosing the one that gets you the most points.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can't get, I mean, if you meet multiple criteria, you can't get over 4 points on that.
That's right. So I think that the question is worth, I want to say 10 points. And part of it is, what's this, how severely disadvantaged is it? And where's the project where's the project located relative to the disadvantaged community? If it's 100% within it, or partially in it, or not in it at all, you don't get any points.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let me see what else here. There is the Cal Poly City and Regional Planning, program is very excited about cooperating with this and bringing any resources that they have to bear upon it in terms of, I sent you all a draft of what the description of the what's now being called the Oceano Strategic Planning Project, which is, fairly comprehensive, but really focused down on Pier Avenue, the revitalization plan, and land use assessment preference survey, or land use preference survey, which will include other things as well. And I think that the March 22nd deadline of 22 for the ATP applications might be a little too soon for them to really get involved, but they're interested in being part of it from a sort of from a planning perspective, and obviously from a training perspective for their students. Do you have any experience of Cal Poly working on something like what we're talking about doing?
For a grant application, or are you thinking for that? Yeah, for a grant application specifically.
Well, the specifically, has in terms of the piece of the grant application, which is like the community assessment, have you done a pedestrian and bicycle safety assessment? That would be probably a logical place for them to plug in to the degree that they can get up to speed on it.
Yeah, for the application itself, it's always heavy on the public engagement side. Maybe a little bit lighter on the quantitative assessment side. So I think, if you are wanting to engage them, it might help maybe on that public outreach side. That's just kind of what I don't know, thinking in the moment. And that March 2022, you're probably basing that on the last cycle, right? For the application deadline, or I might have missed something. Actually,
I was told by the Cal Walks folks said that last week that March 22nd is the deadline.
Oh, okay.
For
2020.
Yeah, 2022.
Okay, it might. Yeah. I think that schedule's still coming together, but it's probably going to be around that time.
Yeah. So we're 7 months out.
Yeah.
Basically. Seems like a long time, but really isn't.
No, it's never enough.
Right, exactly. I'm gonna go to a quick screen share here. Let me see.
I'm wondering, Emmy, sorry, while we're transitioning, is as far as because you're on the land use planning side, is that right? Have you guys been engaged in any of the grant apps with like the public works types grant apps?
I am in the current section, so no. But I know that our long range definitely has some, especially housing and things like that.
Yeah. Okay.
What I pulled up here is from this year. Well, actually, I guess it was probably back in 2020. And this is this was the criteria they used to evaluate applications in March of 21. And here's your good memory, Stephen. There it is. You have disadvantaged communities, 10 points. And I had pulled these up and looked at them in preparation for just a kind of a brainstorm that I'm going to do with Lucia Marr school folks on this, and trying to pull up information that would be useful for them in terms of this is the guidelines for the actual evaluators, but the kind of criteria that they have. And as I just kind of scanned through it, it just seemed like each box I could check it off for Oceano. And I'm not going to obviously take time to try and go through this for our meeting. But this was really useful for me. And I wondered, I couldn't find, I'm sure it's there somewhere, but I mean, there's a ton of stuff on the website. I couldn't find any monetary kind of guidelines on what's a medium infrastructure versus a super infrastructure program. I figured medium. I thought, well, I don't know, but I just looked at the medium stuff. Do you have any sense of that, Stephen? You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, that's another one that's kind of always changing. I think this last go around was $7+ million was considered a large project.
Okay.
Less than 2 was a small, and I think 2 to 7 then was the medium.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then here's the basic another one, all the program guidelines. And so again, this was something I pulled up for the meeting with the schools. And so I mean, it looks like I appreciated that. Well, here's something really concrete that, I mean, if we really want to get our teeth into something, this is where we go. And this is what you said, I think, from the very beginning, Stephen, that this would be what we would ultimately kind of be shooting for.
Yeah. And the rubric is like the best place to start, because it really does spell out exactly what they're wanting to see in a response or something like that. How do you get a full, 20 points for, your project needs statement? So it's a really great guide to be using. And as for the guidelines and the rubric, maybe also in general is they open these up to public workshops for revisions and things like that. Each cycle that will begin here towards the end of the summer. So I'm just saying that because some of this is subject to change. I think it might. I had said, these past cycles have been less quantitative, and I can see it kind of maybe becoming more of a quantitative assessment of projects rather than narrative based kind of description of benefits. So that's, maybe something to keep in mind. And what will always be a huge factor will be the public engagement. And I think you guys have a really good grasp on that, and, just engaging you guys as often as we have. I think that's that you guys are doing a good job of that. So if there are, two places where I think you would focus would be maybe kind of keeping your head in more the quantitative headspace when you're thinking about project benefits, and then making sure you're doing broad and sincere public engagement.
Right. Well, that's definitely, a super high priority, and with the schools on board so strongly, and the great reputation that Oceano Elementary School has with the community and with the parents of the kids that go there. I think it's gonna be great. I think we can really use that to leverage that kind of engagement and input that we're gonna need. So that's good.
Oh, and safety. Sorry, safety is the other factor that I think you guys can focus on. After I'm just kind of looking at a lot of the different collision types and collision factors that are playing into some of these severe injury and injury collisions going on in Oceano. And I did find that a lot of them are occurring at uncontrolled intersections. So intersections where you have a stop sign on maybe only one side. And it's typically, because of a car pulling out before it's safe, or they're speeding. And if you look around, I know on Paso Robles, there's several uncontrolled or controlled side stop controlled intersections where you have a through on one side. So maybe kind of focusing on, and I can provide this to you. I'm like looking at my graphs telling you what I'm seeing, but I can provide this info. This could be used for the grant, or it could be used maybe even just conversations with Supervisor Compton or her staff.
Okay. And Emmy, how would, when I talked to John at Public Works, and this was around, I've forgotten the first name of the fellow that was from Public Works that came to one of our meetings. Matt, right, Matt. And Matt had told me that he had been kind of reassigned to some other stuff, and so I talked to John about it. And the impression I have from that phone call was that, well, he was going to look into that because there were a couple of people, and that presumably it would be good to have somebody from Public Works at our meetings. I don't. And I think, it's essential. Ultimately it's essential because they have to sign off obviously on everything, and they have to they have the critical information for the grant, and they need to be active participants. Do you have any suggestions for, because there's nobody from Public Works here today. So do you have any suggestions about what we might do to reach out to Public Works more? I don't want to be a pest, but I don't want to let this set either.
No, I think you're being reasonable here. I can definitely get in contact with John, see if maybe since Matt's been taken off of that, who the new person is. But also, I think they very much respond to pre-established questions. They're very good at that, and they will give you decisive responses to those. So if you want to brainstorm a couple, discuss them here, and then send it to them, that's easier for them a lot of the time than trying to make the meetings.
Yeah. Oh, you mean in terms of like a specific question in terms
There are
of,
specific questions, and even if you're asking for additional information, they'll do it. It's sometimes difficult, I think, for them to coordinate their schedules
okay,
to do these things. They're just not used to it. It's not part of their general
Okay.
thing. So, but I'll reach out to John, because I know now that you're revving up for something, it's going to be a little easier for him to get some staff working on it.
all right. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you so much. Okay, that's good. So I think
I
that,
think, sorry, something just came to me because we are doing our, I think I had told you guys, we are doing a programming cycle where we're awarding funds. It's about $4 million we have available. And we're trying to deliver, in addition to that pilot project, either one of those two intersections that I mentioned, 15th at Front Street and Paso Robles 13th
mhm,
Front Street. And that will be, we'll be talking about funding decisions in October and December. And if there are, if there's one project in addition to this pilot projects, I think the pilot project is going to be very low cost. But if there is one of those two other projects that we can kind of get the entire community behind, that would be helpful for us when we are advocating for or assessing or choosing which projects to assess even for funding.
okay,
And you guys are well versed. I am on that. I'm talking to both committees and I'm kind of forgetting what I'm saying or what each of you guys have seen, but you guys are pretty much following along with a lot of the Front Street, or was it Oceana Revitalization Plan? Has that kind of been your guiding document, or are you trying to expand beyond that?
yeah, we'd really like to expand beyond that. I mean, especially in terms of the curb gutter sidewalk flood control across the community. And the thought is to, I mean, just leverage all of that around the banner of safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, kids walking to school.
Mhm.
And it's an infrastructure that has been, I mean, those unmet needs have been documented over 25 years in county reports, specific plans, et cetera, et cetera. And so, there has been some things done. Obviously, the stuff that hasn't been done is a much larger proportion of that pie. And so hoping also that will open the eyes around issues of environmental and social justice in communities, because that is in all of these documents now. I mean, that's one of the fundamental criteria. But when we go in and look, and this is something the CalWalks administrators were talking about, that it has been hard for small communities. I mean, Oceana would be a classic example, to compete with the big urban areas where most of the ATP money has gone, in the past, at least.
Yeah, I'd agree with that sentiment. I guess I would say though, if you want, I guess I would recommend that you do focus in at this time on one location. I think we all know for sure that there's the needs in Oceana are enormous. But I think you do have some momentum behind those three projects, or those three locations, in that they are in an existing plan. We have funds programmed, for that corridor, something along that corridor. And I do think Supervisor Compton is aware somewhat of your guys' work. So I'll just say that. I mean, if we want to move forward on maybe one concept, or sooner, on something sooner than later, there's momentum behind those three intersections. Yeah.
And are they all on Front Street, Cienega, or Pacific Coast Highway, whatever you wanna
Yeah,
use.
I can actually, if
Yeah.
you don't mind, I can share
No.
a screen here real quick and show you
Go
the
ahead.
three.
Because I think when you said 13th Street, you said 13th and Paso Robles, and
Yeah, let me see here. You're seeing my Google Maps, right?
there we go.
So here, 13th Paso Robles Front Street.
Okay. Mhm.
So this is obviously a huge, two gaps here to get all the way across on the
Right.
Front Street side. So the project concept is here of constructing a bulb out, which is essentially extending the curb out further to shorten that crossing distance, and also putting another bulb out here to again shorten this crossing distance, but to also make this angle coming out of Paso Robles closer to a 90-degree angle. How it is now, where it's maybe closer to like 45 degrees. Obviously, someone turning left, and this is kind of a spot where I've seen it just in the past 5 years, assessing the data from the past 5 years. But people coming down southbound, making a left onto Paso Robles can carry a lot of speed.
Right.
So that distance, shortening that distance, narrowing that entrance will help to slow that down. And similarly on 13th Street. And I guess I'm maybe being, I'm showing you which one I prefer first, I guess.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
Put an asterisk there.
yeah. And then this one here at 15th and Ocean and Front. This is actually where they would close off this entrance from Ocean 15th. And create kind of a wider walkway here with trees and the like. And then of course you already know the closure of 17th there as the pilot project and creation of a little pocket park. So those are the three that they sought funds for. That's where we have some money now. If we want to make something happen sooner than later, I think that would be, a strategic way to do it.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll stop sharing that one.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I think that's would be very easy to support those. We want to go above and beyond.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll do, but to get, this would be a nice thing to agree on, and to be able to move forward kind of collaboratively. That would be a nice start.
Yeah, and I think the work maybe that you're talking about with Cal Poly students would be that bigger project, that like $10 million project, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so Andy and I are going to have this meeting. He's talking to, I think he's going to be talking, I know he's talking to the superintendent. I don't know if he's going to be talking to the board before our meeting. We're going to meet on Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock, just have over coffee, and hopefully you can get something a little more concrete together to bring to the meeting next month on this, and probably in between I'll be reaching out to many of you to be getting feedback and assistance.
Did Cal Walks mention if they are coming out for another call for, I guess, technical assistance for next year?
They are, and we are on their list. They
Oh, great.
put us on their official list of people that they will be working with.
Great.
Not that we're totally into the room, but they, from their preliminary, just basic looking at our community and what we're talking about, they were all I think really comfortable going, well, you're a real good fit. So we're gonna put you on the list.
That's really great.
Yeah.
You'll definitely engage Public Works there. Or county planning. I don't know if county planning will submit a grant application too. That'd work. Either way. I do know Public Works is super spread thin. So I commiserate with them.
Yeah. Well, the more that we'll get together on our side in terms of, painting as many of the numbers as we can in this paint by number picture, and then they have their numbers. They have their numbers that only they can paint, and there'll be other groups like that, right? Caltrans has their numbers that only they can paint, and so I'm excited, and I'm glad that we have at least 7 months to get going, and so I think that's Kathy. I don't know. You have Aline? Anybody want to share anything else or bring up anything before we close the meeting?
I think it's pretty much been covered, and I really like the, Lucia Mar being partners and then taking kind of like more of the lead. It's got a great reputation with the community. They've gained the community, the trust. It's one of the very few agencies that has, the trust, the total trust of the community, because us being majority Latinos, the trust has been broken with the county decades ago. And there's a lot of, there's just they don't have much hope in the county, unfortunately, but we can change that slowly but surely.
And then Charles, just so I'm clear here as we're moving forward, because I want to get into contact with John sooner rather than later to give him a heads up, and also maybe have a game plan for how I would bring this around to long range if it meets them. You're having a meeting, I know, with Lucia Mar School District.
It's really just Andy and I.
Okay, good.
It's just
and
Andy and I, and he's just working. I mean, I think Andy's decided, okay, I've kind of gone to my, I'm at the edge of my authority here. I need to check in with the superintendent, right? Okay.
Yeah.
That's my kind of sense of where we're at, but we're getting together so that he and I can just kind of get a better handle on what we're really talking about and going to the ATP stuff. So it's really informing ourselves so that we can be better leaders around us.
Okay, perfect. And then just so, because I want to just maybe close off with something that I have an action item that I can give John, or I can tell him what to expect at this next meeting. So they're not coming in blind, because I think that's another hard thing for them. I know that Stephen did mention that there were those 3 intersections. It sounds like you are kind of geared towards, let's maybe do that as a stepping stone, get that done, and then see the larger project, just as CalWalks had provided last time. So for this one, are you possibly going to discuss then the school's involvement in collecting information for those specific areas, how it affects the schools, and then using that? Is that what you're hoping to do at this kind of where you're going next? Or are you still looking at the areas around the school as a potential one too?
So let me just make sure. So are you asking, is our focus going to kind of shift to the 3 intersections that Stephen just showed us?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we going to stay on? So,
and if you don't know, that's fine too. If that's a question during the next meeting.
Well, I think it's really all of the above.
Okay.
And probably the nexus for those 3 intersections down on Highway 1 are, when we looked at the scatter graph that Andy put together, and all those students that are on the west side of Highway 1, and no crosswalks or pedestrian controlled crosswalks that kids would really need. I mean, that would all certainly play into the safety component. But our goal is to get curb gutters and sidewalks much more extensively, and to look for a large grant to get that. So while we'd definitely be real supportive on this, we still want to start doing the work for the bigger stuff.
Right, and that's, I think, the Cal Poly kind of thing again, and then maybe using that Cal Poly information to prompt I'm going to keep coming back to a specific plan update, because I know that they're preparing a strategic plan, and that that to me is just where my mind's going in terms of how we might want to direct people coming in, departments coming in, because they're going to want to see what the larger goal is, even though we're in the beginning. They're going to want to know. Also, then drafting an email to Caleb might be a good thing for next month's meeting to get that solidified. So we have a full package there.
Okay.
Okay.
And so the email to Caleb as in terms of kind of like, here's kind of the basic picture that we're looking at and what we're thinking about
Mhm.
conceptually.
Right. So, you know, introducing, I don't know if you've been in contact with Lynn at all or any of her various peoples about what even this group is in relation to Ocean Advisory, but introducing that and then having a clear statement of, is it those three intersections? Is it focused on the schools? Is it we're needing the county to provide XYZ?
Okay.
What exactly it is, and having that, I think by next month would be fantastic, or at least solidifying it at the next meeting, and then having Public Works sign on that. And that's kind of why I'm getting the revving up for John there.
Okay, that sounds great. And so that will, I'll take those kind of nice direction suggestions from you, Emmy, into the meeting with Andy on Wednesday. And so that'll be one of our hopefully work products we'll bring out of that meeting,
Sweet.
or at least something that we were working on after that meeting to get together.
That sounds great. Awesome.
All right. All right, folks, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. It's really exciting working with you guys.
Oh,
I think we've got some good things, I think, coming.
yeah, I think
on
we're
the-
all hopeful that we
I
can
think so.
get something
Yeah.
going. All right, okay,
Talk to you soon. See ya.
bye-bye.